So I want to start, I feel like I have so many questions because I know that people have so many questions for you. So I'm going to jump right into them. But, and I know you've heard this, but the way of integrity changed so many conversations, changed definitions, and I know, changed lives. So I do want to focus on that. But I also want to talk about you because you started having conversations in self-help and in this space of people understanding themselves better long before that anybody else was doing that. When you look around now, was that scary to start? Because you really were one of the change makers in all of that.
It's scary. It was weird because I really didn't think I had anything to say. I just thought when I wrote my first self-help book, I kept thinking, everyone knows this. It's not like it. And then they said they didn't know it already. And this has continuously amazed me for almost 30 years. So I'm not smart enough to be scared by it. I'm just confused.
But I love your honesty, and you're honest about the fact that you've read every single other book there is out there. But you're right.
Yeah.
And there's so many people giving advice, but really, yours cuts through all of that noise because you really understand who you are. And I think that's, so no, not everybody understands it, or at least we just need to hear it a different way.
Yeah, I was a Chinese major in college, and and I lived in Asia for a while. And I think one of the things that is different is that in Asia, the philosophy isn't that you're born unformed and you have to make yourself better throughout your life. It's that you're born perfect, and then like a perfect jewel, and then the jewel gets muddied up. So people put projections onto you and you learn to do things that aren't perfect for yourself. And the idea is not to add anything to yourself, but to drop everything that isn't completely you. So that process, it may be a little bit backwards from the perspective of most Westerners, but that's always how I've come at it.
But it really is. But it really is true if you think about it like that, and you have such an incredible story and a story of growth in your own journey. But I think what you've done, with this latest book, the definition of integrity, of what we think of integrity and how we think of ourselves and believe, the should have and could have and who we're supposed to be. What is your definition of integrity? So we can start there if people don't understand it.
Right. Well, it's not what you heard in Sunday school because I've had more than enough of that.
Yes.
I'm spiritual, but not religious. The word integrity, the root just means to be intact, to be one thing, whole and undivided. And I compare it to an airplane being in structural integrity. If a machine is in structural integrity, all its parts work together. It is one unit. And then it can do all this magical stuff. It can move, it can fly. But if the parts are out of alignment with each other, if it's not working as one machine, if it's broken up, none of that can happen. So for us, if we are whole, we're born whole and undivided. And then at some point, usually before we can even talk, we get pressure from other people to do things that aren't really natural for us. So be quiet, be smiley, even if you don't feel good, like very subtle things that can affect even pre-verbal babies. And in almost every circumstance, we abandon ourselves to please the people around us. And so that's how we get split. So instead of being in integrity, which is one thing, we're in duplicity, which is two things. One that the people like and one that we really feel on the inside. And we even lose track of the part that is inside. And then we grow up and, 20, 30, 40 years later, we're wandering around going, what am I doing? Why am I here? Why don't I feel good? And it's because we've lost our true nature a long time ago, and we've lost our integrity.
How do you get back to finding that? How do you get back to that? Because I don't know if it was a pandemic. I think it was a little bit before that, but I realized that, I lost my mom at a very young age. I went through a messy divorce and an abusive relationship. And I woke up one day and I went, now what? How did I get here? Right. But that's not just my story. A lot of people go through that and they realize that they're not where they either should be or thought they were supposed to be. And you get that feeling that something's off. I don't know what it is, but it's off.
sometimes it's people who are where they're supposed to be. I mean, I've coached people who climb down off the podium after getting an Olympic gold medal who are just going, who am I? Or people who were elected to high office or who have billions of dollars, and suddenly they're just like, this is supposed to make me happy, but it's just not working. So
Right.
there are these feelings that we get. And I actually model it in this book on Dante's Divine Comedy, because it begins with just that. He says, in the middle of my life, I came to myself in a dark place and I was completely lost. Didn't know why I was there. Didn't know how I got there. Didn't know how to get out. And it's a very scary wilderness. And he calls it the dark wood of error. So he's made the mistake of losing his true path. And I think so many of us do that. And that's why it's a great poem, because it traces the path of lost all the way to found. And the way we do it, to put it very briefly, is when you find out you're lost, you'll notice you don't have a lot of happiness, you have emotional disturbance, you may be ill, you may be addicted, things may be falling apart around you or inside you. Then if you follow Dante's logic, and I do, you have to go inside. And he calls it the inferno. If you've ever been in therapy, that's the inferno. You look inside yourself and you see where it hurts. And then you bring that to light and you look at your inner demons and you talk to them, and then you leave them behind. And if you can resolve enough of those inner demons, what happens is that each of them has abandoned your true self. So if you've got a little demon inside you that says, you're not good enough, you're not, you have to do things differently, you have to do things the way your parents wanted, you're not worthy. Anything that isn't deeply, deeply true for you at the core level, if you believe it, it splits you from yourself. And the way to heal that is to talk to the demon and just say, I salute you, I honor you for having served a purpose, but you are lying. And I won't believe you. And then boom, you're free from that delusion and you can keep going until, with Dante, he goes all the way down through the center of the earth. And the moment you pass the center, the deepest point, then by going the same direction, which was down, you're now going up toward happiness. And that's kind of what my book is meant to help people do.
Versus the beasts of sadness and desperation and the clawing.
Yeah. If you won't go into the inferno, if you won't stand up at that 12-step group and admit you're an alcoholic, or you won't go to therapy, or what, then you just wander around in the dark wood of error. And while he's there, Dante gets attacked by all these wild animals, but he describes each of them as an emotion. So there's a wolf that makes him terribly sad, and a lion that makes him terribly afraid, and a leopard that just makes him feel like there's never enough for him. And those are the things that just tear at us as we wander around, until and unless we're willing to regain our integrity and really look at our belief systems and let go of what isn't true.
And speaking of that, we talk about you talk about lying and how when we lie, people get weaker. And if you really want to weaken somebody, make them lie to you, right? Which I found really fascinating, though, when you think about it, because it really is what happens to ourselves and what happens to other people. But I often think and know that we don't even know when we're lying to ourselves.
We don't. I used to, when I speak in public, before the plague, I would say to people in the audience, is everyone comfortable? I'd stop in the middle of a speech, say, is everyone comfortable? And they'd all say yes. And I'd say, no, seriously, tell me if you're really comfortable or not. And they would say, yes, we're completely comfortable. And then I'd say, so how many of you, if you were home alone right now, would be sitting in exactly the position you're in at this moment? And they're usually sitting in these straight back chairs with no arms. And so nobody would be sitting like that. And I would say, why? And it would take them several minutes to realize that it's because they weren't comfortable, which isn't the problem. The problem was that they just said over and over that they were completely comfortable, and they didn't know that they were lying, even though their bodies knew they were lying.
Of course.
And it's so crazy. We don't know we're uncomfortable when we are uncomfortable. We feel it, but we don't let ourselves know it. And that right there is the biggest division from integrity that most people are used to. We're used to it. So yeah, we have to start by saying, where am I uncomfortable? And then getting really honest about that.
And how does the soul know its truth?
The soul, I divide the four meaning-making systems of a human into body, heart, mind, soul. That's something that a lot of traditional cultures make that division too. It's very common. So the soul, it's interesting. The Buddha used to say, wherever you find water, you can know if it's the ocean because the ocean always tastes of salt. And wherever the soul finds enlightenment, it can recognize it because enlightenment always tastes of freedom. So there are times when our truth is very frightening, like it's time to leave this job or this marriage or whatever, or I'm sick or I'm addicted. Those are scary things to face. But when you admit the truth, there's a feeling of freedom. Like, okay, I am going to quit this terrible job or this terrible relationship. And it's scary as could be. And most people are looking for a feeling of safety. But what the soul recognizes as truth is whatever sets it free. And that can be a scary, scary moment. But you'll learn if you follow it that that actually is the safest way for you.
I feel like your words speak to me, and I know they speak to millions of people. And you say, like, doesn't everybody know this? But we don't. Or if we need to, we need to almost hear it and digest it, because every day is a new day, right? And I feel like one day we learn something, and the next day we forget it, and we need to keep reminding ourselves. I'm in midlife, 51 years old, and I've had this like now what? Yes. Now what? What's next? Good enough? Not good enough? And I realized that I've gotten uncomfortable recently with people saying to me, "What do you want?" They say this, "What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?" And your words are, "What do you yearn for?" And I've never answered that question.
I like to ask people both. What do you want? And they're like, they have a laundry list, mostly of things they've been taught are good to have.
Right.
And then I ask, what do you yearn for? And it's a very different list. So if you, right now you just said you don't know, but actually you do. You can't help knowing what you yearn for. You can just go blind to it. Sometimes it's too vulnerable to let yourself even know what you yearn for, let alone somebody else. So if this feels like too much for you, don't do it. But if you feel like brave today, like just drop in and see what you yearn for. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night. It's dark. No one's there. What do you yearn for in those moments?
Oh, do it now?
Yeah, I mean
it. Wait, for real? Let's see. I think I yearn for bigger. I think I yearn for feeling safe. I think and by safe I mean, even this is a odd thing to say, but like that people aren't going to get sick and die. Like I have that fear coming to me from being very young, from losing a mother. It's making me sweat right now to say these things, by the way.
That's a sign you're really getting honest.
I'm being
wonderful.
honest with you.
It takes a great deal of courage to do this.
And I think I want my voice to be heard on a bigger scale, because I think I have a lot to say, but I always am afraid that people have already heard it, and it doesn't, and I don't have anything new to say.
So you're yearning for safety, you're yearning for connection, you're yearning for that, because that's what I hear when you say you're afraid people are going to die or you're not going to be heard enough. You're yearning for to matter. You want to matter.
To matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so these are very, very common things that people yearn for, and there are really only a few. There's safety, love, peace, belonging, and purpose. Those are like pretty much the laundry list all over the world. And I've asked this of people, street beggars in Africa and billionaires in Europe, and it's always the same. So the way to that is not to keep running around the dark wood of error. There's a mountain that rises out of the dark wood of error that Dante calls Mount Delectable. And all these people are climbing, and it's all lit up with sunlight, and it looks like it's the answer, right? And that's what I see as people, trying to get to the top of the heap in your profession, your power, wealth, status, whatever it is that you think others will value. We try to climb that. And that's where he can't make any progress. He's exhausted. These monsters keep coming at him. So when you just did it right now, Tamsen, you dropped in and you started to face your real feelings and what you really want. And it's scary as hell to put those out there because it makes us so vulnerable. People know what we want. That means they can hurt us. We've actually said that we want something that's so dear to our hearts that our hearts could be broken, right? And yet, if you keep going down that path and simply telling yourself the truth,
Right.
deeply, deeply telling yourself the truth every day. And you're right, we lose the truth every single day. We have all these cultural pressures around us, social pressure. So every day, take time by yourself, sink in and say, okay, what do I yearn for? And am I moving toward it? Am I allowing myself to want it as well as to have that deep secret yearning? At that point, things can get a little magical because, as Joseph Campbell, the anthropologist, said, and as Dante says, that's the moment when teachers begin to appear.
Yes.
And they may not look like teachers. Some will, some books, professors, those things will show up, but so will interesting situations and people who intrigue you. You don't know why, and new folks that pop into your life. When the student becomes ready, the teacher really does appear. So that's what's coming up for you if you start to own these feelings.
Wow, I love that. It really did make me sweat. I was like flushed from the inside.
Fantastic. That shows you're really in there. That's integrity right there.
Well, I'm going to be looking for it because I believe in the magic, and I love your YouTube channel. By the way, this is going to be on YouTube, so we'll make sure and link over there as well. You talk about leaving your nature to serve your culture, and I want to get into that because those words, there's a lot to unwrap in those words, and it's what all of us do. I don't care who we are. And can you talk about how we do that? Because we start doing that before we even realize we're doing that, correct?
Yeah. First of all, culture, the way I use it, I'm a sociologist, so it just means any kind of group pressure. So if you're in a couple, if you have a partner, your partnership has a culture. There are things that are okay and things that are expected in that culture. Your family of origin had a culture. Your ethnicity, your religion, your nationality, all of these are different examples of human culture. And we evolved to try to fit in. We feel safest when we're together. We need each other to survive. And that means trying to fit whatever culture we're born into, whether it's family or ethnic or whatever. And to do that, we will do the most extreme things. I mean, you look at people who have joined cults to try to fit in, and most of them have a very, very strong need to belong. And they'll go so far as to kill themselves to fit in with the group. Like we're the only animal that will literally destroy ourselves to fit in with other people, other animals of our own kind. And so we constantly have to be examining that. Is this true for me? Because the moment you step away from yourself to join with culture, I mean, in my case, I was raised very religious, and it was a religion that didn't work for me. But it took me, until I was an adult to say, this is not comfortable. I don't like this religion. It feels racist. It feels like sexist. I simply don't believe it. But because everyone around me believed it, that was a huge, massive step. If I hadn't taken it, though, I would have gotten more and more unhappy. I was actually physically ill. I had a lot of autoimmune diseases and other things. This also happens to a lot of other people who lose their integrity. The mind fights back, and then the body fights back, and you can get really, really sick if you don't pay attention to your true nature. So eventually something will get your attention, and you'll have the guts to say, okay, my culture is what it is, but it's not all right for me, not all of it. And then you have the guts to stand up for yourself, and people won't like it. I'm not going to lie, they won't like it.
They will not like it. But if you're out of alignment like that, you have no choice unless you just want to be unhappy.
Yeah, and I've watched people, I've coached people who've just destroyed themselves. I mean, I remember a woman telling me she'd had cancer, and she said, I know it's because I'm in this job. I've hated this job from the beginning, but I'm the boss now, and I have to do it. But now I'm dying of cancer. Then she recovered, and she said, excuse me, she said, I know if I go back to that job, I'll get cancer again. She went back to get her stuff, and she came back and she said, I couldn't stand to see another guy taking over my position, so I'm staying. And she got cancer and died. I was like,
believe that.
It's incredible what we'll do to betray ourselves sometimes.
To betray ourselves. What terrible words, right? To betray ourselves. You talk a little bit about the how to make those changes, but they can't really come in big leaps, right? Because we all know that just doesn't work. It doesn't work to just
So,
leap
I mean,
like
I
that, or
did
how
it.
do you? You
I
did
did it
it.
in big
You did
leaps.
it.
I mean, if you're a fan of like base jumping and extreme sports and stuff, you can do it all at once. In my case, I decided
Okay,
not to
then
tell
that's
a
good.
single, I wasn't going to tell a single lie for a calendar year. I did this as a New Year's resolution when I was 29 years old. I said that for the next 365 days, not a single lie. And now at this time I was really sick. I was really depressed. I was really desperate. And they said the truth will set you free. So I was like, okay. But I have to tell you, it's not the truth that other people are saying around you. It's your inner truth. And so I didn't even know when I stopped lying. I wasn't telling big lies. I was telling lies
Sure.
like I'm comfortable when I'm not comfortable. So then I started to get more and more attentive to what was true for me. And I would stop and think before I answered questions, and I would try to be truthful. And that year, let's see, I lost or walked away from, whichever way you want to see it, my profession, my job, my community of origin, my family of origin, every friend I'd ever made as a child or an adolescent in that religious community, my home. I realized I was gay, so there went my marriage. Like literally everything went into the fire that year. And it was not fun. But even in the middle, I was grieving, I was terrified, I was broke, and I was healing. I could feel the pain literally physically leaving my body and my soul as I got more and more honest with myself. And there's a ton of research that shows we do get sick when we lie and well when we tell the truth. And that, what was happening to me was a legitimate body-mind sort of biofeedback phenomenon. I was getting well while my life was actually in shambles.
Right.
And that's why I don't actually recommend it. You're right, Tamsen. In the book, I actually say, take 1 degree turns. Like you're on an airplane voyage and you just turn 1 degree north every half hour, every hour. You won't even notice it, but you'll end up in a really different place, 10,000 miles down the road. And that's what I suggest. So you have my example on one hand. Don't do that. And then you have the 1 degree turns.
1 degree.
Do that. Yeah.
But I'm so grateful you did the big leap though, because it worked for you and it worked for so many of us that hear from you. The lasting cure to unhappiness. What is that?
Continuous connection with your true self and a continuous agreement with the requests of your true nature. And that's what I used to go on these things called integrity cleanses, where I would pay special attention, not only to not lying with my words, but not to lie with my actions, not to go to a place I didn't want to go if I didn't have to. Think about that. Go through your list of things to do and ask yourself, do I have to do this? Do I want to do this? If you don't have to do it and you don't want to do it, don't do it. Just try that for a little integrity cleanse for a while. So now I'm on an integrity cleanse that's been going on for about 7 years. And that really does. I mean, I used to be a very depressed, anxious person. And now, because I'm constantly tuning into my true self and reacting to it, responding to it lovingly, I don't feel very much anxiety or depression. I mean, it was so much my whole world for so many years that it's scary to say it, but I feel really good.
I love that. I won't tell anybody.
Okay.
How did you tap into that? How did you tap into your integrity? Is it every day if somebody wants something actionable? Because that's really what we're talking about. People need to be told what to do, right? Because so many of us can't hear through the noise. And this podcast really is aimed toward women that are in their midlife, because I feel like that is a intersection of menopause, which is what I talk about quite a bit, and age. And, I went through my divorce at 41, and I wound up getting remarried at 50, which I said I would never do. So there's that intersection of all those changes. So where do you tap into that so you can actually find your integrity and then start cleansing?
It goes to that same question I would ask my audiences. Are you comfortable? So, and you have to, because the pressures of culture and our own learned behaviors are so strong and so loud in our minds, you almost have to seek a few minutes alone. I mean, just if you're a mom with kids all over or whatever, dogs and hamsters and whatnot, go in the bathroom for 5 minutes, like lock the door, sit down on the toilet seat closed and say, am I comfortable? Is this the things I've got going on today? Do they make me happy? Do they make me feel free? Or do they make me feel trapped? And remember, it's not, am I scared or not? I was terrified the whole time I was doing that year of not lying. Terrified. But I felt free. So you don't look at the difference between, do I feel good or do I feel bad generically? Look at the difference between feeling trapped or feeling liberated. So when you decided to get married again at 50, right. Did that feel like a trap or did it feel like freedom?
No, it felt great. It felt like freedom because I made that choice, and I made that choice with somebody that makes me feel me. The other one, I walked down the aisle and I said to my father, am I doing the right thing? The first marriage.
If you go to the feeling.
I knew.
Yeah. People always know. I can ask people, when was the first moment you knew that this relationship wouldn't work, this job wouldn't work? And they were like, day one. They had their suspicions, but they just kept going because it looked good. But if you remember going down the aisle that day with your first marriage, the feeling in the body will tell you. There will be tension and tightness, and that's how the body responds to a lie. And when you went into your second marriage, your whole body language when you were talking about the two marriages changes. So it's not that marriage is right or wrong for you. It's this marriage right now, how's it feeling for you? And you go every single day by what feels true for you that day. And you end up with the people that you're most meant to be with, doing what you're meant to do in the places you're meant to do it. And that's a good life.
Yeah, you really have to listen to yourself. You've got the answers, and it's so funny how we really, like you said, betray ourselves and lie. Well, what a pleasure. I feel like I could sit here with you and ask you questions all day long and talk to you, but let me finish with this. What is one thing that still fascinates you in the world? You've talked to so many people, so many leaders, billionaires, Oprah, people on the street. You've talked to so many different people, but is there something that still fascinates you about them?
Yeah, it's something I call the transformation of consciousness, which is something I started to think about when I was a little kid, and then much later realized other people were thinking about it too. And this book, The Way of Integrity, was my attempt to see how Dante reached this point of transformation in his own life. And as I wrote it and as I researched, I realized that there is this phenomenon of, some people call it awakening or enlightenment, where you fundamentally change so that you no longer suffer. That freaking fascinates me. It's a brain event that we can now measure, and I am just obsessed with it.
I love it. I hope everyone can feel your magic, Martha.
Yours too, Tamsen. Thank you so much.